Hi folks, it's Jocelyn. Welcome to my channel. Today I'm doing a sort of retroactive summer wrap-up. Not only do I think it would be too much work to go through individually for each month that I was gone to wrap up all the things that I read, but I don't want to do that. So since I was gone for several months in the height of summer this year because 2020 things, I read about 45 books. I mostly read adult in this time. I snuck in 4 middle grades, 13 young adults, but 27 adult books. Unsurprisingly, they were mostly fantasy, but I did also get 7 nonfiction books in that time, which is huge and has definitely changed what my 2020 reading looks like as compared to years previously. The most I read in this time was in July, which was 15 books. And for both June and July, I listened to over 70 hours of audio because I was hardcore just playing a lot of Animal Crossing and like passively listening to books, as I found it a little hard to concentrate in that time. This was definitely one of my higher rated quarters though. My average rating was 3.7. I read 1 1-star book, 2 2-star books, 9 3-star books, 7 3.5s, 17 4 stars, 2 4.5 stars, and then 5 5-star books. So I do want to talk about those 5-star books in particular because these were the books that like helped, right? There was just a lot happening both personally, globally, and reading really exceptional books was definitely a necessary balm. So the 5 books I loved most this summer, I'm gonna go through in the order that I read them. The first of them was The Undocumented Americans by Carla, Cortney, Jovia, Vicincia. This was a nonfiction collection of essays that take you with Carla as she goes to different hotspots of very large undocumented Latinx communities, and it is so much. This is easily my favorite nonfiction of the year. I think it is so vulnerably and beautifully written. I already knew I was going to love it just from the very beginning. Carla starts the introduction by straight up saying, I am not objective. There is no non-biased way to tell this story, especially because she herself grew up undocumented. I appreciate that she puts herself out there, that she is so honest in sharing her own story and with really getting close to these people and doesn't try to pull any of that journalistic bullshit of being completely non-biased, which is something I don't really think exists anyway. So I was already on her side by just beginning the book that way. This is a very harrowing read though. If you know anything about undocumented communities, I'm sure you can imagine some of the horrors that they go through by not being able to access certain services, by constantly worrying about being raided by ICE, and just, being berated and treated like a second-class person. This book took me like a full month to read because each chapter, even though they're, probably like 20 pages each, were just so heavy. I think this is extremely relevant. I think it is poignant. And since finishing this, I've been seeing a lot of different Latinx bookstagrammers talking about how much they love this as well. I know for sure this is going to make a lot of people's favorite nonfiction book of the year lists. And in particular, I know Lupita from Lupita Reads, who is an Instagrammer who I very much look up to, loved this book and has talked about her own personal connection to it because she also grew up undocumented. So if you're interested in hearing a more personalized recommendation or review, first of all, her reviews are amazing. I trust all of her book picks so much because she has amazing taste, but also she gets very personal when she talks about this on her Instagram, and I'll be sure to leave that down below. The next 5-star book I read was a horror, and that was The Ballad of Black Tom by Victor Lavalle. I read The Changeling by Victor Lavalle, I think 2 years ago at this point, and loved it. I loved the way he did dark and weird in The Changeling, which seemed to be a little bit of an unpopular opinion. A lot of people thought it was like 2 separate halves, but I didn't have that problem with that story. Anyway, The Ballad of Black Tom is Victor Lavalle's take on a Lovecraft story. We follow Tom in, I think it's 1920s New York City, and it is just excellent. This pretty much nailed down my suspicion that I think Victor Lavalle's sensibilities and mine are quite similar, and I really appreciate the way he does scary. I don't often get scared by things. I grew up watching a lot of horror, and I've been looking for horror books that would actually give me those like edge of your seat, can't stop reading feelings. This is only the second book I've ever rated 5 stars, and I think it is truly, truly beautiful. He obviously also discusses race, as Victor Lavalle is a Black man. This is set in historical New York City, following a Black man dealing with white people and racism, as well as obviously supernatural horror-y things. I don't want to get too much more into this because it is so short. It's just about 150 pages, and I read it in one sitting, and I loved it so much. My next 5-star read was one I picked up for the Black Hotties book club, and that was The Vanishing Half by Bennett. This is one that has been making the booktube rounds a lot this year. It's one of the bigger 2020 literary fiction releases that I've been seeing even people who read a lot of YA fantasy delving into this one. This is Bennett's second book, and I know people loved her debut, which was called The Mothers. After reading this, I'm more interested in reading The Mothers because this is also a book that on its face doesn't seem like something I'd love that much. This is a book that follows 2 lines of the same family, starting with these twins, Stella and Desiree, who are very light-skinned, white-passing Black women. But we follow Desiree and Stella, who are growing up in this town, which has many, many light-skinned Black people, and was basically started to be that way because of the prevalence of colorism. This community definitely buys into the idea that the closer to whiteness you are, the more acceptable you are, and I think Bennett like super digs into that in a way that does get very uncomfortable at times. And the way that these 2 different families navigate life and the way they react to each other and to other people, I just thought was really, really fascinating. This is quite a dark and heavy book. There aren't that many happy things that happen throughout it, but I did really enjoy the audio narration of this especially. I think one of my favorite reviews I've seen of this is from Ashley of Bookish Realm, where she talks about 2 different books that really discuss colorism. And as a Black woman, she obviously has a lot more to say on this than I do. So I hope you will be checking out her review as well. I will leave that in the description bar underneath. But I thought this was so gutting, and usually when I listen to audiobooks I have to be doing something, but the last half hour or so I was just laying on my floor just sobbing listening to these people's life stories. The next 5-star read I had was The Stone Sky by Nk Jemisin, which is the finale of the Broken Earth trilogy. This is the least surprising 5-star I've probably read this year because Nk Jemisin's The Broken Earth trilogy is so well loved. This is the trilogy that each individual book won the Hugo Award when it came out, so most people agree this is a standout SFF series. I don't know if I can really do specifics for this one either, simply because it is the end of the trilogy. But I will say that after reading the first book, the 5th season, I was a little concerned to go into the second because there was a twist that I thought would maybe not necessarily ruin my experience, but would make the next books a little bit less exciting. And that is not the case. Nk Jemisin continuously surprised me and was still pulling scarves out of her pocket. I don't know how she did it. This woman is magical, and this is definitely a once-in-a-lifetime, just like stellar trilogy. I finished this book and I immediately was like, I need to reread the first book now that I know all of these things, and I think it's going to be one that really gets better on the reread. Again, I did not think that was the case. I was so concerned that like knowing the twist was totally going to hamper my enjoyment, but this is one of those rare cases where now that I know more, I want to go back because I can tell that she left these puzzle pieces throughout, and I want to know more. I want to pick her brain. I want to just get further into this series and learn all of its secrets. It is just beautiful. And the final 5-star book I read in this time was You Should See Me in a Crown by Leah Johnson. This is a debut YA contemporary that is just the physical embodiment of like sunshine and warmth. I listened to this one on audio as well, and I started reading this for the Dragons and Tea book club. This is a book that I definitely needed at the time that it came to me. I sort of mentioned in passing that one of the reasons I stayed away from BookTube for so long was because there was a death in my family, and this was the book that I read on the day I found out that news. We were preparing for a couple of days and I was just waiting in limbo until basically it was confirmed. And after I got the news, I knew I was going to shut down, so I turned to comfort things. I got the call and then was like, I'm done with the world today. I went on to Animal Crossing and I put on this audiobook. And even just thinking about this book gets me really upset for that reason. This is the story of Liz Lightly, who is a senior in high school and has very big dreams for college. And then she finds out that she's not getting as much financial aid as she was hoping for, and her family really cannot pay all of this tuition. She sort of finds out in the final moment that the prom queen who wins gets a scholarship, and so decides she's gonna run for prom queen and really hope that she gets the scholarship. In that time, she also starts a relationship with another girl who was also running for prom queen, and this sapphic relationship is definitely one of the best that I've read this year. I love that even though this is very much about Liz falling in love, it's still mostly about Liz herself, and I don't feel like she changes or loses herself by getting into a relationship. I love the way she interacts with her brother and her grandma, who she lives with, because she also semi-recently lost her mother. And even though there are tough subjects in this, the way that grief is talked about and dealt with, and the absolute hopefulness that permeates these pages, truly I could think of no better book to have read on this day. The best way to describe this book is delightful, and I'm so glad that more people are reading this. I am so happy this is the first Reese's YA book club pick, and yeah, just an excellent time overall. But I hope this gives you a little more insight into what I was doing while I was gone. And also, I did miss talking about books that I really love, and these 5 in particular, I haven't really had the option to gush about as much as I want to. So that's this video. Please comment down below and let me know if you've read and loved any of these, and if you have other recommendations for books that you think have a similar vibe or that you loved for similar reasons. So yeah, that is going to be it for me today. Thank you all so much for watching, and I'll be back with another video shortly.